Things like this usually don't happen in a community like ours. It's very tragic.
Investigators release autopsy reports today for 8 members of an Ohio family killed execution style.
We begin tonight with a deadline that has passed for the mother of 2 missing children from Rexburg.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Amanda and we talk about all things true crime related. I like to cover a plethora of different type of cases, especially ongoing ones, and the one we're discussing today is one that has been ongoing for far too long. Now, before we get into that, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Both really help me out as we are inching closer and closer slowly to 1,000 subscribers. Also, I need to remind everyone that everyone we discuss is innocent until proven guilty and all crimes are alleged. So this case is out of Morenci, Michigan, which sits right on the Ohio-Michigan border. It was the day before Thanksgiving when Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner Skelton were going to be dropped off by their mother, Tanya, to spend the Thanksgiving holiday with their father, 39-year-old John Skelton. Now, John and Tanya married back in 2002, and this was the second marriage for them both, with both of them having children from their previous relationships. Together, they would have 3 boys, Andrew Ryan, who was born on November 20th, 2001, Alexander William, who was born on November 4th, 2003, and Tanner Lucas, who was born on October 20th, 2005. These 3 brothers would be the center of everything that unfolds next. Now, for the marriage, as we know, it wasn't all rainbows though, because Tanya had filed for divorce about 2 months before this visit on September 13th. And things had not been easy since. Allegedly, John was not happy about the divorce and he really wanted to work things out. According to people close to Tanya, though, she was really ready to be over with the marriage. She had been going back and forth for a few years now with this. Apparently, or I guess allegedly, John has been isolating himself or secluding himself more and more over the years, and it was just something, among other things, that she wasn't able to deal with. Now, right after John found out that Tanya filed for divorce, he actually took the 2 older boys right out of school, and while he was in Ohio, like I said, it was the Michigan-Ohio border, he texted Tanya saying that he was taking the boys to Florida. Tanya immediately would call the police, and the police chief actually reached out to John and convinced him to return the boys. However, later that same day, I don't know what the fuck John was thinking, he picked up the boys again and drove to Florida. From what I saw, this is where he was from and this is where his parents were from. He returned, though, eventually after some time, and reports said that as soon as he got back, the custody would be granted immediately to Tanya. The courts really don't look highly on you just taking your kids out of state without consulting the other parent. Now, John filed a motion after he returned back, basically telling the court that he believed Tanya was a danger to the boys, because back in 1998, reports show that Tanya agreed to take a plea bargain, and she pled guilty to 4th-degree criminal sexual assault after being accused of sleeping with a 14-year-old boy. According to Tanya, she and her ex-husband owned some rental properties, and this 14-year-old helped out around there doing things, I guess, and the 2 ended up in a relationship. It was something that I guess Tanya called a mistake. However, I have to call a spade a spade. There's no way you can have sex as a mistake. I mean, we can do things that we regret. However, just the mindset that someone could sleep with a 14-year-old boy. But one thing that we have to pay attention to is just because this prior incident took place, it does not mean that she's not a victim now. 2 things can be true at the same time, and definitely need to not focus on her past when we're talking about the boys being missing or whatever happens to the boys. Although it is salacious and interesting to some, I don't think it helps out whatsoever when it comes to finding the boys. But John filed in this motion that he thinks Tanya's a danger to the boys. However, he didn't feel this way at all when he was an over-the-road truck driver and she was a stay-at-home mom to her 3 sons. I think that it's ironic, or really just disgusting, that as soon as she filed for divorce, this was an issue. According to Tanya, she said that John knew about this before they met, and as they started dating, before they got married, this was something that John was completely aware of. According to everything I saw, she was introduced to John by a cousin of John's, and everybody knew about Tanya's past. It wasn't something that she kept as a secret. From my understanding, she's a registered sex offender. So I'm not really sure what changed from the time that they were together from when they got divorced, other than John's bruised ego. But when it came to custody, it does look like the 2 would work things out on their own without having to deal with the court stepping in. Now, this would bring us up to the Thanksgiving holiday of November 25th, 2010. John had begged Tanya to let him have the boys to spend Thanksgiving with them, and he promised to return them to her Friday. She agreed after some convincing, and then that Friday morning, November 26, 2010, reports would say that an acquaintance actually took John to the hospital after he was injured attempting to take his own life. From what I saw, there was a few different stories around how Tanya found out. I watched something much more recently, and it said that she found out from texting and she was unable to get a hold of him. But records, or I guess newspaper reports from that time period, saying that Tanya had heard this through the acquaintance, and when John didn't return the boys by 3 p.m., she would call the police and report that John had not returned the boys. They said John was taken to the hospital for a unaliving attempt, but no one knew where the boys were. So police would enter the home, and I'm not sure if they had a warrant or if since Tanya and John had lived there together, maybe she was still on the loan to the house or the deed to the house and she was able to enter the property no problem. But either way, it seems like they got in very quickly. Inside, they found the house a total mess. Broken glass, severed appliance cords, and a noose hanging from the second floor. There was also a Bible left open with a verse circled. And then police also found a note that was left for Tanya saying, "You'll hate me forever, and I know this." Tanya would later say that when she went into the home herself, it was full of smashed Christmas decorations and it was chaos everywhere. It seemed like John, at least in my opinion, had completely lost touch with reality. I don't know what was going on with him at this time period, but it seemed like he just lost it. Now, John would tell police that a woman named Joanne Taylor and her husband Mark would come to get the boys. He said that he met this couple a few years ago when he was helping them fix their car after it broke down on the side of the road. And according to John, on Thanksgiving Day, he decided that he was going to take his own life. So he had this woman, Joanne, come to get the boys so that they wouldn't be home when he did take his own life. And she was supposed to take them to Tanya. However, she did not. Police, though, have said that things they learned in those early days led them to believe that within the first week of the boys' disappearance, that something nefarious had already taken place. An Amber Alert was issued, and from an article from November 27th, it reported on the situation. Now, it did not report the woman's name. It just went on to say that the father gave the children to a woman that he had met online and that she may live in certain areas. The following day, it looks like they released even more information saying that this woman went by the name of Joanne Taylor and that she was supposedly driving a white or silver minivan and that she was supposed to return the children to Tanya. Police said that Joanne may have lived in the Hillsdale or Jackson area, although the police chief made it clear that he couldn't verify any of John's story. They were trying to find this woman and her husband, but they were not having any success. Now, when police confronted John with the fact that there was never a Joanne, he, of course, changed his story. First, it was a guy named Niles, then after that, it was a woman named Sue, then following that, it was a man named Elijah, and finally, John settled on a man with a van would actually come and get the kids, supposedly from a part of an organization that would protect kids from their mothers like Tanya. Police publicly said that they do not believe any of these stories, and John was arrested on November 30th, right after he was released from the mental health hospital where he had been receiving treatment after his unaliving attempt. He was charged with 3 counts of parental kidnapping. Since he was arrested in Ohio, he would need to be extradited back to Michigan, and that actually happened pretty fast. I mean, I'm sure they're used to that kind of thing. Police then asked the public if anyone had seen John's blue Dodge Caravan on Black Friday of 2010, which was the first day of hunting season. And now that I look back, that seems pretty straightforward. If he did take the children's lives, he would be doing something with the remains. And I'm sure police were wondering if anyone saw this minivan out and about in the early morning hours. You know, it was dark when we'll learn that he was reported out. We'll get into that a little bit later. But someone may have seen him parked in an area or somewhere that may lead to finding the boys' remains. Now, large-scale searches were conducted across different parts of Michigan and Ohio using aircraft, scent dogs, and everything they had. But to this day, there has been no indication of where Andrew, Alexander, or Tanner are, dead or alive. And realistically, there isn't much doubt about what the outcome has become unless you're John or his parents. Now, that doesn't mean that police didn't follow up on every single tip, lead, or false sighting over the years, because they absolutely did. But again, nothing has been found that leads to any indication that the boys are alive, unfortunately. Now, like I said earlier, when John was extradited back to Michigan, he was arraigned and held on a $30 million bond for the 3 counts of parental kidnapping. In a hearing in December of 2010, John once again told the story that he had given the boys to some organization who supposedly came to his home on the evening or in the early morning hours of Thanksgiving. The judge asked him the name of this group, and in court, he told the judge he'd rather not say. It seems like the name would eventually come forward. However, police have have zero evidence that this group ever existed. And then during a hearing on January 28, 2011, which was related to the couple's divorce, John told the judge that he just wasn't able to produce the children. And within days of this hearing, police publicly said that they no longer believe that this is a missing person case. They shifted it to a homicide investigation. John's charges were also upgraded to 3 counts of unlawful imprisonment and kidnapping, which could carry a life sentence, and his bond was also increased to $90 million. 5 months later, in July of 2011, John would accept a plea agreement. He pled no contest to each of the unlawful imprisonment counts, and the kidnapping charges were dropped. But the court made it very clear that he could still face additional charges in the future. Judge even said you could still be charged with homicide, which pretty much shows the sentiment of everyone in the courtroom and those following the case of what the charges should be. The prosecutors came out after this hearing and said that they believed the charges that John pled no contest to were the same charges that a jury could find him guilty on. But it's important to remember that around the same time it was when Casey Anthony was just acquitted of Florida for the death of her daughter Kaylee. So prosecutors, I'm assuming, were being more cautious than they probably were other times, and they weren't trying to bring charges that they didn't think they could prove. Then on September 15th, John was sentenced to 10 to 15 years. He, of course, tried to appeal this, but it was denied. As the years went on, we learned more details as the police continued their search for the boys. We learned that John left his house in the early morning hours of November 26, 2010, around 4:30 a.m. His phone would ping in Holiday City, Ohio, around 5 a.m., and that was the last ping until 6:46 a.m. when the phone was registered back at his house. Police believe that after that 5 a.m. ping, the phone either died or was shut off, and the distance between his house and the ping location was roughly about 28 minutes or so. So realistically, it would take about that 28 minutes to return, meaning there was about a 75-minute window of inability during that time period. And through the years, every search has turned up nothing. In November of 2012, age-enhanced photos of the boys were released, hoping someone might recognize them if they're still alive. This happened again in December of 2016 when Andrew would have been 15, Alex 13, and Tanner 11. Still nothing. Most people close to the case do not believe John's story, but his family, especially his parents, I'm not sure what happened there because they've held on to hope way longer than I think they should. And I try not to judge parents when it comes to supporting their children. I just don't get it. They think that their son handed off their grandchildren to random people that he said were part of an organization. I just can't. Like, the thought process. These are just random people. How do you know they're part of a real organization? You have no idea where your grandkids are and you're supporting him after 15 years. It just blows my mind. His family has been really enabling him, it seems, for far too long. I do remember seeing a news report of his mother trying to justify the fact that he was cutting the appliance cords because he thought Tanya or someone who was helping her was come to take the appliances. So it's normal in your mind to think that destroying it is better than someone else taking it. I'm not sure you could have any more of a, if I can't have it, neither can you kind of mentality. And I just feel like that just enables, like, what is, words, not my friend right now because I'm so annoyed by this situation. Now, John Skelton's first chance of parole came in 2020. Thankfully, he's been denied every single time, and he is coming up to the higher end of that 15-year sentence. In 2023, Tanya began the paperwork to legally declare Andrew, Alex, and Tanner deceased. She said that she was doing this to be able to move forward with her life because she knew that John would never give her any information regarding what happened to them, and she believes that they are unfortunately no longer alive. It finally went before the probate court in early of 2025, where evidence was presented to show that the boys were no longer alive, and it was because of John. John appeared via video of when the hearing began, and he said that he did not want to participate, claiming that he didn't have the money to hire a lawyer and that nothing he says will matter anyways. Detectives would testify that at one point John was confronted by his church pastor about what happened to the boys, and John told him, "I sent them home." And to him, home meant heaven, of course. Investigators also found searches on John's computer, whether rat poison could kill people, and for instructions on how to break a neck. And then there was also testimony covering a lot of what we've already discussed. The phone data, everything John told police, his multiple stories and the so-called people he claimed had the boys, and the fact that no one has ever been tracked down to support this story. Now, at the end of the hearing, Andrew, Alex, and Tanner were declared legally dead. But when it came to actually finding John responsible for their deaths, the court said that there just wasn't enough evidence to formally make that determination. And the judge said that by doing so, she would just be joining in on speculation and theory. And then, finally, on November 12, 2025, everything changed. John Skelton was charged with 3 counts of open murder and 3 counts of tampering with evidence. The most recent court filings show that John has continued to mislead police and has still refused to help with his sons, even in an interview as recent as November 3rd, 2025. The document states that John did knowingly and intentionally remove, alter, or conceal the body of his children in order to avoid a determination as to the cause and manner of death. He was arraigned on these charges on November 18, 2025, and the judge set his bond at $60 million. 53-year-old John was actually set to be released from prison on November 29, 2025, after his 15-year sentence basically maxed out. And honestly, it gives some insight onto why the charges were brought now. I'm assuming they just wanted to build a case. That's why they brought the 3 counts of unlawful imprisonment. However, over the years, it doesn't seem like they've obtained too much more. Other than now, the boys are legally declared dead. Now, no one in the community where the boys lived have forgotten them. There's a plaque with their names and pictures attached to a rock at a park near Bean Creek with the words faith, hope, and love. It's a reminder that even though time has passed, the community has not stopped caring about Alex, Andrew, and Tanner. In response to the latest criminal charges, the family issued the following statement. It has been 15 long years since our 3 boys, Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner, went missing. Throughout this time, our family has lived with unimaginable pain, unanswered questions, and the constant hope that one day we may learn the truth about what happened to them. Today, we have been informed that an arrest warrant has been issued for John Skelton, who has been incarcerated for the past 15 years and was scheduled to be released in just over 2 weeks. This latest development has left us shocked and heartbroken all over again. Our priority has always been and continues to be finding out what happened to Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner and seeking justice for them. We ask that the investigation be allowed to proceed thoroughly and without interference so the truth may finally come to light. We also ask for privacy and respect during this incredibly difficult time as we process these devastating developments and await further information from law enforcement. Now, as I said before, the remains have not been located. Police are asking if you know anything to please come forward. You can call 517-636-0689 or 1-800-843-5678. But that's all I have. As more develops in this case, I will definitely make sure to keep you guys updated. Please make sure, like I said, to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Both really help me out. And if you've made it this far, you're amazing. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Until next time, stay safe out there. This world is an ugly place.